Good afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of Supply Chain Talk. My name's Alistair Chowton, your host today. And our main topic is going to be the future of drones in the supply chain. And before that, as usual, we will discuss a topical news item. Please do switch on your chat panel on the right of the screen so that you can join in. We always welcome your insights and questions, and we'll try and respond to as many of them as we can. And as is normal, there will be a Supply Chain Talk mug for the contribution we find the most valuable. So do join in. If you're not on Zoom or registered via the Business Reporter website, remember you can register on the Business Reporter website to have the full experience. But otherwise, if you're on LinkedIn, welcome, observe, and next time do register. So let me bring on my first guest, who is Dr. Mohammed Azmat, Azzy, who is Assistant Professor and Deputy Programme Director for the MSc Supply Chain Management and the MSc in Engineering at Aston University. Welcome, Mohammed, Azzy.
Thank you very much.
Azzy specialises in supply chain management with a wealth of knowledge in logistics, sustainability and emerging technologies like drones, and his research focuses on innovative strategies to optimise supply chains, and as well as numerous publications, he also collaborates with industry leaders. But it's not all lectures and spreadsheets, as he says. He likes jetting off to new places with his camera in hand, with a mission to capture the world, one supply chain conference at a time. That's the spirit. And on that subject, do look out for Supply Chain Talk, our next 2025 conference. I think we won't be publishing details until later this year, but we will be having another live event next year. My second guest is Patrick Strauss, who is CEO of Tomorrow's Leaders Today. Welcome, Patrick. Patrick has over 30 years of experience in emerging technologies, supply chain and digital transformation at industry giants like GlobalLogic, Hitachi, DXC, Luxoft, IBM and British Telecom. And he continues to share his knowledge and insights through roles at Cranfield University, the Institute of Management Development, IMD, in Switzerland, and also at the London School of Economics. He recently launched Tomorrow's Leaders Today, bringing his coaching passion to senior leadership executives. And the surprising fact is that Patrick played a pivotal role in creating the world's first real human-to-cyborg development, which was a groundbreaking tech for good initiative for those diagnosed with motor neurone disease. My third guest is Mustafa Keshteli, who's Associate Professor for Research in Industrial Engineering at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico. And Professor Keshteli is a recognized and highly cited researcher in supply chain design and nearshoring. His research interests focus on creating innovative supply chains, particularly in the field of energy. And away from work, Mustafa is deeply involved in exploring the keto diet, enjoys reading about history and the philosophy of science, and he's also proficient in 5 languages and has a passion for linguistics, literature, and cultural understanding. And finally, Karen Coombs is Chief Operating Officer at Dark Hive. And after spending her career in supply chain manufacturing and operations, Karen is moving into the drone world with Dark Hive, whose mission is to provide low-cost, easy-to-operate autonomous drones and software systems to the military, first responder services, and more. And as another practical use of drones, she's really keen that her husband is really keen that she will bring a drone home to help move the cows and check on things at their dairy farm in New Hampshire. So lots of really interesting experience there of how to apply drones, I'm sure. Welcome, Karen. So our news item this week is from the website globaltrademag.com. It was from earlier this month and it's written by their journalist Rob Harvey, and it's entitled How Drones Are Revolutionizing Logistics and Supply Chain Education. So this article very much focuses on the role of drones in education, and it brings to light a lot of very interesting perspectives on the sort of value of drones in the education world. It kind of touches on some familiar issues like the huge shortage of supply chain experts and also just basic jobs in supply chain like drivers and warehouse workers. And it highlights the fact that, you know, there is a real need to attract younger talent into the supply chain industry. And it describes how drones can have a really important role in that, because by learning about drones, and especially how drones can add value in the supply chain, it can really help demystify the logistics field and really attract a new generation of, as it says, dynamic, tech-savvy, school-age generation. It talks about lots of the familiar examples we have of drones in lots of different industries, but it does highlight that working with drones, students get so much experience, both of the sort of technology, the hardware, software, data analysis, programming, tremendously valuable. And interestingly, it also talks about the role that various aviation organizations have had, and I wasn't aware of this, that they are setting guidelines, not just for drone usage, in the wide world, but also for drone usage in education. So I guess setting, guidelines to what people can and cannot do with drones in the educational setting. So a long article, so I won't say any more than that, but it did seem a really interesting one to remind us not only that drones have huge potential to transform many operations across many sectors, but that drones can really, have an interest for students, and that interest can be harnessed in education to attract a new generation into the supply chain industry. So lots in that article, and turning to you first, Azzy, what would you like to comment on there?
So, hi, also thank you very much for having me today. It's absolutely fantastic, just knowing that there are people out there who are trying to understand the drone applications and also how drone can be used in different settings, including supply chains. I mean, like we're going to talk a lot about it. We're going to talk how this is going to be very fruitful for the supply chains. But at the same time, I think this education perspective needs to be highlighted. We need to understand that there's a huge potential of all these students that are coming to our universities, and we can actually give them some hands-on with these tools such as drones and robots and autonomous vehicles, something to play with. Just very quickly, a small example is that we started our MSc Engineering Management in Autonomous Systems not quite long ago, and there has been an inclined interest from all over the world, students who are trying to understand and want to have some hands-on experience. So we see the interest at both ends, students and the academia.
Okay, no, thank you. That's great to hear that experience. And Patrick, obviously, you work in three educational establishments. Are you seeing drones becoming part of supply chain education?
Well, let's put it this way, Alice, and thank you for inviting me back. I would like to see more, and I have to say I've read this article probably twice or three times since you made me aware of, and the reason why I've read it a couple of times was really I got really enthused about it when I was reading it, because let's be really honest, supply chain isn't sexy. Yeah. And I speak from experience, kind of working with students, trying to kind of give them a feel of the opportunities that kind of lies ahead of them when they finish their degrees. But I think really kind of what this article highlights absolutely spot on is the opportunity of kind of bringing STEM related type capabilities and thinking to it. And it does make that supply chain field a little bit more innovative, a little bit cooler, a little bit more sexier, really. And then I think this is really what kind of attracts that sort of new talent that we're looking for. We all kind of complain we haven't got the right people. People are really a bit put off by environments that, don't kind of comply with Generation Z, Generation Alpha type thinking. I think technology such as drone, autonomous vehicles, etc., these are the stimulants, for students to hopefully think beyond the sort of theoretical stuff that they learn at universities.
Thank you. Mustafa, obviously you're getting another academic, a full-time academic. I mean, again, are you seeing drones becoming more a part of education?
Thank you very much, first of all, for for the invitation. And thanks to my colleagues, Mohammed and Patrick, I agree with their suggestions and comments on that. When there is a need, so there is a way to, to achieve it. We have like a wheeled, like a suitcase. In 1971, 1 year after, like the first man who landed on moon with Apollo 11. When it comes to such issues, as Patrick mentioned, so we should clarify some points. The birth, maybe a stage of the drones, so became like a prolonged, and we should consider different aspects of that, maybe issues. Some issues like sustainability in supply chain. Supply chain is not sexy, as Patrick mentioned. So we cannot push, supply chains or companies to do that. Now we have, I think, big problems with drones in all aspects, environmentally, maybe technically. That's why we have some panels, maybe like today's panels. But after that, we have like maybe some points like AI that became more popular. So we should think about it, and I have some ideas. Maybe we can share it with you. But anyway, I'm not very like optimistic for the future of the drones, as some of my PhD students are working on like autonomous vehicle like drones, because there are still big issues on that one. I don't want to be like a pessimistic, but in the reality, actually, I'm not very optimistic that the problems will be solved very soon.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll pick up some of those kind of different viewpoints perhaps in a moment. And Karen, turning to you, I mean, do you get out to schools at all ever with your drones? Does it excite the new generation of logisticians?
I'm looking forward to it, but like Patrick said, supply chain hasn't always been the most exciting area. It's but very necessary. But as we have labor challenges growing, as we have supply chain challenges growing, I think technology is going to be required to solve these. Drones are that gateway drug to innovation. It's going to get people excited about technology and about innovation. It's going to teach us things about how do we downsize, how do we make things smaller, how do we use technology. But I also think it's going to increase cultural acceptance of drones and other technology, much like computers in the classroom did for us when we were younger. And it's going to be required for people to get more comfortable with technology and interacting with it in the future. So I think it would be great to see that more widely spread than just supply chain.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. And again, we'll touch on some examples in the main discussion. So let's move to our main topic, which is the future of drones in the supply chain. And the first sort of agenda point we have is drone feasibility as a mainstream delivery method for last mile logistics. And perhaps this is, Mustafa, where you might touch on some of your kind of more pessimistic views. But I think it's sort of, well, we've all seen, I think it's probably, if you said to people, what do you think of drones in the supply chain, they would imagine, I'm sure, those photos we've all seen of a little drone buzzing around in the bright sunshine, dropping a parcel into someone's garden. But what if you are not having a small package? What if you live beyond the range of a lightweight drone in the middle of nowhere, 100 miles away? What if you live in an apartment block? Can a drone leave a parcel with a neighbor or in a safe place? So I think with all that, turning to you first, Azzy, can drones realistically be a mainstream delivery method, or is it just a lot of hype and it's just a little niche part of last mile delivery?
So you touched a nerve there. I think I must have already said something about being pessimistic, and I know this conversation should not be going that direction for most part, but I think the realistic is the right word here when I'm explaining something about drones. You see, Asta, I wrote my first article on drones was back when I was doing my PhD 5-6 years ago, and even at that time, I had this very realistic idea of how we can use drones and bring them, or at least part of them, to the mainstream supply chains. I agree with Mustafa. Somehow it is kind of scary to see the innovation that we are talking about, be it AI, be it drones or autonomous vehicles. uh, they are in their infancy. We still have to learn a lot about them. We still have to experience a lot with them. We have to have our hands-on experiences and try to understand the business applications and whatnot. But when the cons outweigh the pros, then technologies do not really survive, or did not become the glitter or the star of the societies. We have tons of examples, many technologies which look very promising. They come to the market and then they just disappear into the thin air. So I'm not saying that drone is going to be one such thing, but I have a very big hope for drones, but not necessarily very hugely commercialized as from the very hugely commercialized aspect. Just last few words about what I think drones could be the best use scenarios. It could be the humanitarian supply chains where we can use drones. I mean, we have been using, and this is what I propose that we should use it for. We can use drones in suburban areas, hilly areas, mountainous regions where driving takes so long and it would be not a very ideal situation. Now, I don't think so that anytime soon we would see drones flying over our heads in the metropolitan cities where we are making around million deliveries every day in London. Just
Yes.
imagine like they're like flies flying everywhere. So I
Yeah.
think nobody would want that. So yeah, we can talk about it for tons more.
Yeah.
Yeah, over to
Okay.
you.
Thank you. And Patrick, I mean, yeah, so your view on that last mile logistics point.
At the risk of not really repeating what Azi and Mustafa have kind of sort of alluded to, I'm exactly aligned, you know, as both of them. I think there are some significant limitations for it to become, you know, absolutely mainstream. And also at the risk of, you know, becoming the master of buzzwords, I've used the word sexy in the kind of the first part. I'm going to use a very important word here. And every technology only works when it has purpose. I think for drones, the purpose is exactly kind of what Aziz has kind of just said, is, you know, kind of for very specific purposes, such as humanitarian help and support, but also for kind of getting things, small things, quickly from A to B. There are significant kind of hurdles to overcome. Yeah, talking about kind of the urban side of things, you know, kind of hundreds of drones flying around us with little packages. I think for everybody that will be very difficult to comprehend, let alone we don't want that, because I think the risk of something going wrong is significant. But also urban kind of environments just doesn't lend itself. So hence I think drones will kind of coexist with other existing delivery methods, you know, that have their own purpose. And I think that's really is kind of what will drive, you know, kind of future thinking and future adoption of this technology. I don't think it will go away. I don't think it will be as getting as big as people probably say it could be in terms of market. But I think, you know, there are still very much opportunities there. And, you know, I'm looking to in Karen's direction because, you know, that's one of the reasons why obviously her organization exists, to kind of really, you know, work in these kind of areas of opportunities.
That more specialist use, exactly. And I think it's an interesting point, Azzy, that you made, that, you know, when you've got 1 million deliveries in a city, well, even if a drone can do, I don't know, 50 deliveries, 100 deliveries a day, I mean, you've got tens of thousands of them buzzing around one single city, and you've got all the pigeons or the parakeets or whatever flying around. I mean, how are you not going to have some collisions and drones falling from the sky, plus their parcels falling into the street?
Just adding on to that, you know, we are getting used to hailstorms and everything. Just imagine if there was a drone storm as well, just drones dropping from the sky. You know, we don't want that. Nobody does.
It sounds like it could be the new terror movie, you know, drone storm. I like it. Mustafa, moving to you. You obviously have also your slightly skeptical view about the mainstream. We're talking about the mainstream use of drones in last mile logistics.
Yes. Thank you very much. Other panelists mentioned main points, especially on the purpose that Patrick mentioned, and also education AI. So, you know, maybe we have recorded, or you have recorded, more than a dozen of like a podcast about sustainability in supply chain, you know. But in reality, when we see what is happening in supply chains, even for government that have money, they don't, you know, make more maybe attentions on sustainability in reality. Some of them stop because of the like you know, cost and some problems like this, and we cannot push them. You know, now in terms of I understand in disaster, in healthcare, we can use maybe drones. They are very valuable for us. But when it comes to the issue of like paying money or cost of a technology, you know, such tangible, you know, issues. Now, my father is a farmer. Now I know that, you know, farmers are not well educated, are not well, you know, being familiar with like a technology. But if you ask me, the most people, or most maybe category, the majority of the people that using now the drones are farmers. You know why? Because they are very like refusing accepting technologies like combine harvesters or maybe for cultivation machines or something like that. Why they are using drones? Because this is very tangible for them. Their process is very short. They understand that it reduces the cost, so they use that technology. Okay, in the last mile delivery, maybe this is very fantasy that you receive your pizza from drones or maybe packet from drones, but in terms of cost, it is not tangible. I think for the supply chains. You know why? Because as Patrick mentioned, supply chain is not sexy. They cannot imagine what is happening in their costs, what is happening in their technology. Also, we have a lot of problems with their air, security, safety, blah, blah, batteries issues or something like that. So anyway, when we translate a technology to become more tangible, so there are some customers for that and we go forward. But some issues like sustainability, even we have no problem so far. But all of us agree on that one, but still there are some maybe hinders.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Karen, you've been waiting patiently, and I know we'll cover some more specialist use of drones, but your thoughts on that sort of consumer last mile logistics for drones?
And you guys have all echoed a lot of what we discovered when I was at Amazon Robotics and we were talking about drone delivery. So customer sentiment is a huge impact. How people perceive that, what they think of drones really plays into it. And then the second part you have to think is the business ROI. If you have a high cost drone operator flying that thing versus a delivery driver that in a city could hit 100 packages at an hour, the trade-off isn't there. There are some interesting use cases, like was discussed earlier about humanitarian use cases. For example, they're using it for blood delivery in Africa, which is Zipline is a company there. I think there's an article we can drop for that. So there are really, if you have high ROI use cases, I think there are unique set-asides, but the applications in supply chain are probably more relative to not last mile delivery, but whether it be different areas like I think we're going to discuss about inventory management and some other areas.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. And just to ask you then, so when it came to Amazon, I mean, I don't know if you can't say anything, but were they sort of viewing it when you say consumer sentiment, just the fact they can sort of offer it, it's all exciting, it's Amazon, hey, we're being innovative, but actually it was never really a realistic major part of the delivery strategy?
I'm sure it's something they're continuing to review, but when you think about different urban areas, is it going to land in your backyard? Is the dog going to get the package when it lands in the backyard? If you live on the third floor of a triple decker, how is it going to deliver to your apartment? So there's so many challenges along with weather and local laws. There's a lot of challenges that have to be overcome, and I don't know that the cost benefit is there for all of them in last mile delivery.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Well, let's move to our second point, which is enhancing supply chain security and facility maintenance with drone technology. So again, a different area, perhaps more specialist in terms of lots of potential, the ability to, for example, survey a large site very quickly, image recognition and AI can just automatically process the images from multiple drones continuously and alert, operators when necessary that there's an intruder at the edge of a fence or something looks wrong within a warehouse. So again, back to you, Azzy, your thoughts on this? Is this all positive, or are there privacy issues, other concerns, which are pretty big barriers here?
So, Asa, if you're talking about using drones in the industrial setups, I think it's a very positive approach. Now, this is what we should be focusing our resources towards, perfecting the research in this direction, where how we can use drones, which would make sense, right? So, drones have been used, and there have been beta testing around usage of drones for pipeline testing in the industries, because there are tons of pipelines kilometers long that was inspected by human individuals, and it was a risky job. So we have eliminated the risk from that job. If you're talking about any cement factory, or you're talking about any oil and gas factories, so the risk reduction is a big positive that is coming out of the drone technology combined with the AI camera technology. Likewise, we can use drones in the warehouses. We can use drones to monitor the inventory, calculate the inventory. There are tons of such applications, safe and no such privacy concerns. Also, it is reducing the risk. So as Karen was talking about the ROI and the trade-offs and stuff, so we have to look for the trade-offs, how we can actually introduce some technology into an existing model that would make sense and would be profitable for both the company itself and for the people who are actually going to be using or working alongside that technology. One last thing that I have actually talked about previously, and I have seen there has been a growing interest, is actually what Mustafa just said in the farming side. The In the UK, there was a three-county show a year back, and I was there presenting about the drones and the AI, and people were listening, and they were very surprised to see that drones can actually help them count their sheeps and keep the track of everything, so we do not even need to be there personally to sort of, identify the areas and pit holes and all those kind of things. So I think these are the areas that we need to pick on and see how we can use drone applications.
Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, so Karen, you're definitely on the right track there on your dairy farm for counting the cows or rounding them up. But let's move back to Patrick. What would you like to add in terms of these more specialist uses of drones, the pros and cons?
I think the examples that we've mentioned very much kind of go to my point of what I mentioned earlier about purpose. Yeah, if we have kind of specific purposes, areas that are hazardous for human beings to maybe enter or work in, if they're kind of high buildings, if they're very wide kind of areas, these are all kind of really good use cases where it validates to kind of look at technology such as drone to utilize. And we know already that, kind of big household names are utilizing, as he already said, in their day-to-day operations, be are they in the warehouse or even kind of, looking at kind of wind turbines, in terms of maintenance. And the benefits really are that, kind of you're looking when we kind of utilize the sort of combination of those mobile cameras ultimately as what drones are, using the computer vision, using AI, and kind of driving that much more predictive maintenance type scenario, which a lot of the manufacturers, a lot of kind of companies that, kind of operate huge assets in areas that are miles away from, anywhere civilizations. These are kind of, perfect areas where drones could be, kind of a sensible and cost-effective answer to kind of really come into it. However, in terms of the privacy concerns, I think where the sort of kind of the gray area is when your commercial or industrial setting merges with a private setting. So, for instance, if you have a large field, yeah, and you use kind of drones to kind of monitor that as part of security. And what if at the end of that field is, kind of housings, etc. Obviously, you need to kind of balance that out, because then you kind of open yourself very, very quickly into lawsuits of the people that kind of say, this drone is looking into kind of my garden. I don't want that. So finding that kind of right balance, yeah, in terms of it's easy for us to kind of, industrial setting, commercial settings, we find plenty of purpose use cases. But then it's kind of, there are these gray areas where the commercial setting moves into the private setting. And again, that's a whole handful of conversation and thoughts that need to be had as well.
Thanks, Patrick. Some really interesting insights there. And Mustafa, obviously, you talked a little bit about the use of drones in the farming area. But again, did you want to highlight any other sort of thoughts on these more specialist use of drones within the supply chain?
Yes, thank you. Like other technologies, as Patrick mentioned, about maybe purpose, about maybe some trade-offs, maybe something like that. So this is like a technology management that all of us like be aware of. But we are using any technology to be like a faster or shorter or maybe cheaper or easier or something like that. Okay. So, and in this regard, some companies are still fan of like a new technologies to use that one. And I think after 5 years, 10 years, like what is happening with Tesla batteries, for example, we have faced problem. At the first glance, it was like electric, like vehicles, like very good for sustainability. Now we have some problems with their maybe batteries. So, for example, in maintenance, as you mentioned, I was working in Persian Gulf in the like oil and gas companies. I asked one technician about maybe 2 years ago, why are you using drones there? You cannot use maybe simple camera or sensor or something like that? And he answered me, yes, we can do our work with camera sensors, but in some places maybe we need that one. And I asked him, why do you use like drones for anywhere, any maintenance or going up? So this is like a visual, this is like maybe dangerous, you have like a security problems or something like that. You know, choosing new technologies, so it is very attractive because as I mentioned, cheaper, faster, easier, or something like that. But without considering other issues. So, like one, maybe it is not a good example, but we have like a fast food and then we have like a slow food. Okay, what does that mean? It means that at that time, all of us are fan of like that technology, that trend, that hashtag, and after that, electric vehicle has a battery. So what should we do with a battery? Now we think about to recycle, how to make like a renew or something like that. So
Yeah.
I think it's better to use, I think, or in my opinion, like less technology that we examine that technology. We know maybe head and tail of that technology and we can handle our technology. Okay. If we want to increase like using technology, all gadgets in our kitchen, so we don't have any place for all the gadgets like Ninja or something like that. So we cannot work with them.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on. Karen, I mean, I think again, not necessarily just on the maintenance side, but I mean, I think we touched on the value of drones in sort of hazardous, remote, difficult to reach areas. So it sounds like the sort of work you're doing with first responders, military, and so on is be lovely to get some of your insights, examples in that field.
For sure. I think, and I've also, great examples of it when I was in the construction materials industry. We were using drones for surveying inventory of aggregate, huge piles out in the middle of the quarry, right? A very controlled environment. So there's definitely those controlled environment use cases, but I think we have to look at what drones can also bring. Thermal imaging, for example, leak detection, as was discussed earlier, using thermal imaging, what other technology can we put on these? And then how can we also use them to expand things like internet capability? Think about emergency management. We've had some hurricanes come through the US recently. Drones have been critical in getting to cut off communities to bring them batteries, internet capability, or just to check on people. So, whether it be, road clearance and having visibility and understanding what's up over the hill or what's around the corner, the flexibility of drones and the importance of making them useful for everyone. I think, our company is really focused on how do we make this so you don't have to go to a 3-year drone course? How do we make this technology accessible and useful for everybody so they can gain the benefits of drones more easily?
Yeah, and it's really interesting all this. I think that what we're sort of coming to, also relating to our first point, is this is drones not actually really carrying loads, except in very specialist medical examples or emergency, just taking very small quantities of batteries or internet capability. But it's much more around their ability to be a kind of very efficient platform for capturing data, images, checking stuff. So there's a lot of sort of common ground there that we've established. Let's move to our last discussion point, which is measuring the potential environmental impact of deploying drones. And I guess we all recognise that lightweight, electrically powered drones do have a pretty small carbon footprint, whether they're delivering or for photographing or whatever. It's a lot less footprint than driving an engineer for hundreds of miles along a pipeline, for example. But I guess if we recognize that we don't think they're going to be mainstream for delivery, I guess that impact is going to be fairly modest. So I suppose, when we're talking about environmental impact, are drones an answer, or are there other things we should be focusing on? I know, for example, that lockers are becoming more and more widespread for consumer deliveries, and are incredibly. One of my students at Cranfield University actually just did a very interesting study, and they're incredibly efficient when it comes to the consumer collecting on foot or by bicycle, which on the whole they will be doing, and the footprint is incredibly good in that case. So lots of points I've been raising there. Azzy, over to you. What would you say about environmental footprint and can drones have a good impact there?
So it's a very interesting point. Actually, what I think is there is no practical, measurable environmental impact of the drones that we can actually be very proud of. So you see that maybe we are reducing the carbon footprint. So what? We are increasing the noise pollution. We are trying to mitigate one problem, creating another one. So this is not the solution that we should be focusing on, or trying to fix something that can be fixed in a better or more efficient way, like lockers in the cities within a 5-minute walking distance. So lots of researchers tells us that if something is located within 5 to 7 minutes of walking distance, people prefer to walk than to take any other mode of transportation. So we already know these things, and this is a universal phenomena. It is generalizable, and we can use these kind of outcomes to address the issues like this. Now, I'm not at all saying that we should not be using the drones, or I'm not saying that drones do not add any value or benefit. They do significant. Sometimes they are the only difference between the life and death. So if you ask somebody in Rwanda or in other such places where they are providing the blood, or they are providing really life critical medicine and stuff like that, yes. But from environmental point of view, specifically environmental point of view, I don't think so. Their numbers or their technology adds anything to the sustainability as such.
Okay, no, thank you. Patrick, would you agree with that? That actually drones, the environmental side of drones is more what they can discover with their imaging and so on. If they can find a leak quickly, that's a heck of a lot more environmental impact than potentially saving something on delivering a parcel.
Yeah, I probably would agree. I think, again, I know I'll repeat myself in terms of the purpose, but exactly to sort of kind of, if you have such as an emergency, a leak or kind of, humanitarian catastrophe, kind of having the ability to deliver something from A to B quickly, I can see drones being probably the vehicle of choice to do exactly that. However, the shortcomings are that you can only go one direction, and probably what you kind of put onto a drone is probably quite limited. So if you have lots of things, and this is kind of where the sort of delivery model really comes into its own, in terms of if you have a huge delivery density in terms of kind of really doing multi-drops, etc., the drones are not the answer in that respect. Yeah, and this is kind of where we look at alternative options, such as you kind of mentioned, the lockers, which are becoming really much more commonplace nowadays, because you can combine it with trips to the supermarket or going to the train station, whatever.
Absolutely.
Because believe it or not, the amount of rise of postal lockers I've seen here in the UK is phenomenal. But then by the same token, you have to remember, drones, unless you have the super expensive one that obviously kind of fly with solar panels, which I don't, and I'm looking, Karen, in your direction here. I've not seen really many commercial drones out there that people can afford readily. So what that means is the sort of drones that we majority have access to still need energy, still need electricity. And guess what? If you have lots of those drones that kind of do these deliveries in whatever shape or form, that grid obviously kind of gets kind of bombarded with that additional need of electricity to power the drones so that they can fly. So the question really is, are we actually kind of creating a greater sustainability purpose here? I think if we're creating that grid that kind of maybe already is powered by sustainable energy and green energy, yeah, maybe. But I would say we're still not quite there yet to kind of really claim drones are going to be the most sustainable answer. And I think more research needs to be done. And what I found interesting, though, is kind of a recent study that I found as part of this sort of kind of podcast today, kind of claimed that drones can reduce emissions by 94% compared to truck deliveries in some cases. So I do take some of those sort of kind of values a little bit as a pinch of caution, in terms of what has gone into this kind of research. But let's be under no illusion. With the right purpose, absolutely. You don't really care how much electricity is needed. You need to help people, or you need to fix, kind of a leaking pipe. I think that has precedence.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Mustafa, kind of turn to you now. We're getting shortish of time, so a brief answer, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you very much. Just I agree with my colleagues and just mentioning maybe 2 points. Like break-even points, that like a threshold that you're using technology, for example, a smartwatch or something like that, you buy that technology after you think that this is beyond like a threshold point or maybe break-even points. So, I am thinking about like a potential overuses of people. So this is, I receive my coffee every morning with Drawn. Why? So we can use like a smart coffee maker or maybe microwave or something like that, So I destroy everything like visual, maybe pollutions, like using battery. And that company says that, so I receive more benefit from using the coffee or pizza to my consumer. Is that, right? Is that correct for our future? We can imagine what are the like maybe disadvantages that we face. Another point, I was working in a national park, and they, after like maybe dawn, after like evening, they turn off the lights. And I asked, why did you turn off the light? And they told me that so frogs have to sleep, birds have to sleep. Okay, you know what is happening with wildlife, like birds in our cities, in our villages, after using drones? So this is a big challenge. We cannot answer to this question easily, that we destroy, even for like a visual pollutions. So why? Because I want to receive my pizza, my coffee from the air. So this is just an example. This is the main point that I, from the beginning, like a debate, I know the value of the drones and maybe cost, time using a supply chain, but we should be careful because we are expecting this area. And I think we have something for the future, like generations, we should worry about it.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Karen, I mean, I guess in your field, I think as we touched on, I think Patrick touched on it. I mean, if you're in an emergency situation, I mean, kind of, well, we all recognize the importance of the environmental impact and the carbon footprint or whatever. It's just not an issue when it's an emergency. And yet, presumably, I mean, I don't know if that comes up at all, because presumably if you're sending something by drone or surveying something by drone instead of by helicopter, well, goodness me, you're having a hugely positive environmental impact. So your thoughts in what you're doing in your company will be really, really fascinating.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of carbon offset, right? And a lot of just life-saving, obviously. So, if you can get up a drone and get visibility and make decisions about whether to drive trucks down a road, whether it's worth it, is it worth sending out a rescue crew? Is it worth sending out an emergency services, or is everything okay there? Are you getting false signals? It gives you a lot of visibility to make smart decisions. And I think in those cases, it's super necessary. Like you said, it's way cheaper than sending a helicopter, and it's probably way cheaper than sending the fire truck from town and all the first responders just to find out, it's a cat in a tree. So I think there's those use cases, but I think we also need to really examine the totality of our supply chain. And as Mustafa was saying, disposable, cheap use drones out of Asia, China, that are throwaway toys are going to add to, the environmental load. So onshoring and looking at companies that are thinking about onshoring and being smarter about where they're sourcing the materials and how they're building those drones should also be a consideration to consumers.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because the actual the sort of the lifetime of a drone for deliveries or something like that, I doubt it's as long as the lifetime of a truck, for example, of a delivery truck. So but there's issues. As is always the case when we look at environmental things, to understand the true end-to-end full cost of environmental cost of something is a complex thing. So let's finish on that, because we are reaching the end of our time. Some really fascinating insights there, and I think if there's one big takeaway, it's that drones are interesting for consumer deliveries, but really it's the least of it. It's these specialized uses in the supply chain and wider sectors that's got huge potential, and as our article said, also the huge potential to really excite a new generation of supply chain enthusiasts and experts. So thank you to my four panelists, Dr. Azzy Azmat or Dr. Mohammed Azmat Azzy from Aston University, Patrick Strauss from Tomorrow's Leaders Today, Mustafa Keshteli, professor at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico, and finally Karen Coombs from Dark Hive. Thank you, all four of you. Our next episode is not for another 4 weeks. We've got a little bit of a gap, and that's going to be hosted by my colleague Anna Maria Velica on the 13th of November. So put it in your diaries, 4 weeks from now, 13th of November at 4 p.m. And the topic there will be leadership and career growth, nurturing the next supply chain generation, which ties in nicely with our news item. So I hope you can join us then. Thank you for joining today, and we'll see you in 4 weeks' time. Goodbye.